Greetings historians, welcome to Lore of the Dragon. As promised a while ago, I'm going to be covering the rest of the Guardian's tales. However, as one of these individuals is more prevalent than the rest from here on out, today I'll be focusing primarily on the Fire Guardian Ignitus, as opposed to my last talk on the Guardians. If you aren't up to speed on what exactly the tale of the Guardians are, the previously mentioned talk on them might give you a better understanding of what I'm going to be bringing up today. Ignitus had just been found by the purple dragon of legend, Spyro, and Ignitus, even in this moment, was without hope. But as Spyro asked what, or rather who he was, Ignitus explained a war that he had fought in not too long ago, and the terrors that he saw. But as Ignitus answered his questions, and explained that he was the purple dragon of legend, prophesied to bring upon a new age, the Guardian was convinced to help the prophecy come true. First, they'd venture to the Dragon Temple, left in ruin after so many years. From here, Ignitus would train Spyro to hone his recently discovered fire element, and launch their quest to find the other three Guardians. When Spyro would have ventured to distant parts of the world, Ignitus would stay in the temple with a device called the Pool of Visions. This would give oddly only Ignitus the ability to pierce into the happenings of far-off places, and in rare cases, the future. He'd use it tirelessly, finding where the Guardians were, and as more Guardians were returned to the temple, not only would Spyro learn a new element like ice and electricity, Ignitus would find another Guardian, until they had finally found Terrador, the last of the captured Guardians located in Munitions Forge. As Spyro was attempting to free Terrador, Ignitus, most likely through the pool, could see that the mission would take a turn for the worse, as an abomination known as the Terror of the Skies was fated to confront the Purple Dragon and the weakened Guardian, most likely leading to their end. So Ignitus took to Munitions Forge, confronting the Terror just as she was ready to take down Spyro. An aerial battle would take place between the Guardian and the Terror, but eventually Ignitus would be beaten, and taken captive just as the others had been. He was brought to Concurrent Skies, a place said to once be visited by electricity guardians, a tall tower where they maintain and study lightning. Now it was used as the Terror's fortress. It wouldn't be long until Spyro came to Ignitus' rescue. However, the Terror would linger in the shadows, stalking the Purple Dragon until he found Ignitus, who had been chained to a wall, having his energy drained into a crystal. He'd implore Spyro to run while he could, but it was too late. The Terror would overpower Spyro, and while he was down, the Terror grabbed the crystal, releasing Ignitus but taking his power through a portal. Confused by what had just transpired, Spyro asked what, or rather who, the Terror was, and Ignitus hesitantly would tell him. The Terror, who Ignitus called Cynder, was taken by the Dark Master's forces during the raid on the Dragon Temple, taken from the same clutch of eggs Spyro was a part of. She was twisted, corrupted by the Dark Master's magic, and now acted to enforce the rule of her master. Now, Cynder was going to use that energy from the Guardians to release the Dark Master's essence, as it had been captured many years prior on the other side of the portal, a place between the Dragon Realms and the Dark Realms, Convexity. While it was dangerous, Spyro took to the portal with two goals: to stop the Dark Master's essence from being released, and if at all possible, free Cynder from the corruption. While this transpired, Ignitus would head back to the temple and await Spyro's return. And to his joy, he did, along with Sparks the Dragonfly and Cynder, now having the control of the Dark Master removed. For what Cynder had gone through, though, Ignitus apologized, feeling that he failed in his duty to protect her. But the others assured him that nothing more could have been done, and quite honestly, I would agree. In the weeks following, Spyro and Cynder would train together, while the Guardians perhaps looked out for attacks and restored their power, as earlier it had been drained by these crystals. But one night, as each of them was fast asleep, the temple fell under attack by apes, waking the Guardians. From what we can observe, Ignitus would end up on a balcony leading into the temple, slowly being overwhelmed. Spyro would appear on a cliffside, and as the apes were taking down the Fire Guardian, Spyro would give Ignitus the distraction he needed to let out a fire blast, wiping out all the Dark Master's minions. But the blast would temporarily trap Spyro outside. Fortunately, Spyro was able to force the apes into retreat. Finally, Ignitus would walk to the temple entrance, looking for Spyro, Cynder, and Sparks. But when he asked where Cynder was, Spyro had to explain that she had run off to find where she belonged, most likely out of guilt for what she had done. They would meet up at the Pool of Visions, Ignitus trying to see if he could find Cynder, but for the time being, he could only see darkness. However, only moments later, something else would come into focus. What he said to be Spyro, standing at the base of a great tree, surrounded by a lake of mist and gloom. Spyro would note that he saw something very similar in his dreams, to which Ignitus, somewhat aggravated, would state that the young dragon had been keeping secrets from them, following with asking what else he had seen in his dreams. The young dragon mentioned a mountain, draped in shadow with a face of stone, 2 moons hovering overhead, to which Pterodor sternly uttered the name, the Mountain of Malefor. Thunder would suddenly fill the ceiling, but only the dragonfly would seem to pay it any mind. Spyro would go on to say that he also heard a voice, one belonging to a chronicler, a shocking revelation to the Guardians. While they all thought him a myth, not even having heard the name mentioned in eons according to Voltaire, the electricity guardian, Ignitus mentioned that while he did question the legitimacy of the stories, Spyro knowing of the chronicler, without even ever being told by them, was odd, but fascinating. Pterodor would add that it wasn't a coincidence that the chronicler appeared at such a dark time. And Ignitus would continue saying that it was true that the chronicler was associated with the coming of doom. Even further, it would be noted only minutes later by Cyril, the Ice Guardian, as each dragon looked to the sky, that something called the Night of Eternal Darkness was upon them, as the 2 moons of their world were about to eclipse. And with the recent attack, it was concluded that the temple was no longer a safe haven for them. Immediately, Ignitus ordered both Voltaire and Cyril to head to the mainland, find what news they could, while telling Pterodor to warn the inhabitants of the Shattered Vale about Malefor's armies. Ignitus himself would stay in the temple and try to help find Cynder. Spyro would ask what he should do, and putting his faith in the chronicler, Ignitus told Spyro to find the tree in his dreams, and that he might know where to start. It was a place untouched by civilization, at the end of the Silver River. While it was a dangerous place, with poisonous waters and hostile creatures, he was sure Spyro would be fine. And until Spyro returned, Ignitus would wait at the temple. But when Spyro and Cynder didn't return, Ignitus was forced to leave and head to the mainland, to the dragon city of Warfang. While the Guardians' faith in the Purple Dragon would wane, Ignitus was able to keep up their spirits. But still, Ignitus would send a cheetah by the name of Hunter to track them down, and in the meantime, the Guardians would help to fight the forces of Malefor. Ignitus would see Spyro and Cynder not only defending Warfang, but also having just taken down a golem, a massive creature of rock and magma. Most likely joyful, he flew down to greet them. While Spyro apologized for not being there to help sooner, Ignitus told Spyro that he had done more than anyone his age was expected to do, and that the only thing that mattered now is that they were all safe in Warfang. However, Cynder mentioned that it wasn't exactly her choice to come along, as the 2 young dragons had been bound together by a magical chain around their necks. Ignitus, though, said that they should not look at this as a hindrance, but a metaphor for their intertwined destiny that they now shared. Later that night, they would observe a message from Malefor to the dragon city of Warfang, of his plans for the world. He wished himself to fulfill the prophecy of the Purple Dragon, to bring upon a new age by destroying the world through a ring of fire, created by a massive creature known as the Destroyer. But of course, the Guardians, Spyro, Cynder, and many others were determined not to let that happen. While they couldn't catch up with it, as noted by Pterodor, Ignitus mentioned a plan to use an underground entrance to Warfang to sneak up on the Destroyer as it completed its circle. Unfortunately, it would only be Spyro and Cynder that could open the gate, as it needed to be opened from the other side, and only the young dragons were small enough to fit through the cracks leading to the other side. leaving Ignitus and the others waiting. But eventually, the gates would open, letting Ignitus and the others through. But as they walked toward the destroyer, Ignitus mentioned to Spyro that he knows what he must be feeling, fear most likely. But Spyro asked the Guardian why he seemed so calm, given what was transpiring. In short, Ignitus said that Malefor might not be putting in as much of an effort to stop Spyro if he didn't think he was a threat. And, because of his own observations, he believed that despite Spyro's fears, he knew that Spyro would bring upon an age of peace, as opposed to his predecessor. They would reach the other side of the path, just as the destroyer was approaching. Ignitus would guess after being asked by Pterodor that they might have until midday to stop the creature. But Cynder devised a plan to use his dam to harden the destroyer's legs as it was crossing a canyon in its path, giving them enough time to perhaps stop it. While this plan did seem to work for a few moments, and gave them a brief time to celebrate, it seemed that Malefor had placed a countermeasure to give the destroyer one last push, completing the belt of fire, starting the shattering of their world. With haste, Ignitus told the others to find shelter, while Cynder would bring up outlying civilizations that might not know of what's going on, and Spyro would mention those in the Dragon City, and wanting to help them. Ignitus would say that he needed Spyro and Cynder with him, and told Pterodor to lead those in Warfang to shelter in the underground city. Pterodor, before flying off, would mention knowing Ignitus had something planned. And indeed, he did. He told the Earth Guardian that he planned to bring Cynder and Spyro across the weakened belt of fire, as, because they somewhat stopped the destroyer, the belt of fire wasn't necessarily at full strength. And once he was done, he would go back and meet up with Pterodor. As the Earth Guardian flew off, Sparks would get pumped to go with Spyro on another adventure. But as Spyro and Ignitus explained, Sparks would not only be needed to help lead those in the Dragon City underground, but even with protection, he wouldn't last in the flames. And so hesitantly, he'd give the job of looking after Spyro to Cynder. And as they flew to the Belt of Fire, Spyro would tell Sparks to be careful. Then the three Guardians would disappear as they flew toward the flames. Ignitus told Spyro and Cynder to stay close, and carefully, under the protection of a shield, they'd make their way through the fire. But the Guardian's power would begin to weaken, and the Guardian knew that his time was nigh. While Spyro said there might be another way, Ignitus looked to Spyro and Cynder, telling them that he had never done right by either of them, and now that's all he wanted to do. So he told them to follow their heart, to trust in each other, and, no later, he wrapped the two young dragons in a shield as he was incinerated, leaving them alone on the other side. But Ignitus' tale would not end quite there. As the world was breaking apart, Ignitus' spirit would appear, lending his words one last time to Spyro, giving the purple dragon the knowledge he needed to save the world. After all of this had transpired, Ignitus' spirit was brought to the White Isle, the home of the Chronicler. And the ancient dragon explained that as an age ended, a new one would of course begin, and a new Chronicler would be chosen for that age. And now, Ignitus was being bestowed that role. But as his time was ending, the Chronicler looked for Spyro in a book of time known as the Book of the Dead. This book would make a new page for each dragon that perished, but it seemed that Spyro and Cynder weren't in it. While the Chronicler disappeared and Ignitus was bestowed the title, he continued where the last Chronicler left off. Then he actually found Spyro and Cynder weren't dead, but alive, flying through the sky, and that's where we saw Ignitus last. From this point, I'm not sure what we can do. Perhaps speculate on Ignitus' backstory. Either way, perhaps even now Ignitus still holds the title of Chronicler in that dimension. Maybe in another he survived. We may never know. But if you all wish to discuss it, you can go to the comment section and see what others are saying. Maybe even leave a comment yourself. Or if you wish not only to talk about this subject, but many other subjects in Spyro lore, you can go to the Discord, which the link to that will be down in the description along with the Twitter. There, you can stay updated on videos and other things I might post, much like the community page here on YouTube. And there as well, you'll find a link to a channel known as Frivolous Dragon. They have music, cutscenes, and more from the Legend of Spyro series. I suggest you check out their channel, because it is a pretty good archive of all that stuff. Anyhow, that's going to be it for me. I hope to see you all the next time we talk and speculate. Stay safe, historians.